We are speaking with Troy Gregory of HVMAN. It also has another company project called the Ghost Project, and they're all both intertwined with helping people move forward with their ideas and their desires. Could you tell us a little bit about the Ghost Project and also HVMAN, how it all fits in?
Yes, I'll be more than happy to. So, the Ghost Project is a private innovation hub where we design ideas. At this point, we are not rendering any services. That is due to the fact that we are honed in on the idea of human, right? But I will show you how they relate. So, the Ghost Project is a company that believes an idea can change the fate of tomorrow for a better day, right? And how that translates into what we're doing with human is a multimedia platform where we encourage people to find truth in another person's perspective, bringing people together one culture at a time, forming a global community. So that's how we are helping. That's how we're promoting an idea that can change the fate of tomorrow for a better day. And so what we focus on with human is one-on-one interviews where we cover the whole person's life story from their immaculate conception all the way into who they are now, right? And then also we have campfire sessions, which is where we discuss different subject matters that have affected us throughout the span of time or currently affect us as humans, right, today. One example of campfire sessions, one of them that we recently just had this past month, was called conscious discipline. And conscious discipline focused on how do you discipline your conscious mind by what you let in, what you hear, and what your other people's opinions, right? How do you filter that? But then in turn, how do you, on a conscious level, apply discipline into your life? And while that is taking place, how do you discipline your emotions? Because we know that one can lose control of their emotions, and it can be sometimes difficult to manage so many different things at once, right? One thing I said during that campfire session that stood out to me was like a different ideology of what emotional intelligence is. We're oftentimes taught that emotional intelligence is the control of one's emotions. But some people don't know how to control their emotions in a healthy way by transmutation, right? Transmuting those emotions into a more positive space that then creates this drive. A lot of people do the opposite and they suppress their emotions thinking that this is full control. But another thing that we need to take a look at when it comes to emotional intelligence is what you feel can oftentimes be the truth, even though sometimes your emotions can be chaotic, right? I have survived for an extremely long time being homeless by my intuition, which was based in a feeling, right? That gut feeling, that's why they call it a gut feeling. That feeling in itself holds intelligence, right? If you read it the right way, is what I believe. So that was one of the things that we spoke
Now,
about during that campfire session.
I wonder what you're thinking is I've always looked at when the mind and the gut are working together, I feel like that's affected more with fight or flight kind of situation, how your gut feels and how you're standing on your emotion, but you're trying to think it through. Versus when you have your heart mind together, that seems to be better guidance to me. What are your thoughts on that?
So this statement is going to be broad, but it makes
Okay.
sense in a way for sure. So I think we live in a paradox where most truths are applicable to different situations, right? Person like myself who was surviving on the streets for a very long time, I found that my gut didn't lie to me and actually saved my life from many different situations. Now, it could be but fight or flight. But when you
Mhm.
are, I feel like I don't want to say one with yourself. I want to say when you trust yourself and you trust what is it that you're feeling, your gut in turn doesn't lie to you, in my opinion. I don't think it always has to do with just fight or flight, right? I think it's we all have that innate thing that's built into us, even when we're conversating with one another and the transference of energy, excuse me, that is happening from one person to another. You can feel whether you and that person are on the same accord, right? So
Same plane, thinking on the same lines, so to speak.
you can
Okay.
feel that and you can feel that's why in the new age they say people vibe, right? We vibe together because you're on the same, are aligned in the same energy field in terms of respecting one another, connecting with one another, most importantly, and really understanding where one another is coming from.
I believe you're right on the money with that. Vibration's the real thing. It's definitely the real thing. Something I remember reading about Tesla and his thinking about frequency and being on the same plane to make things happen. We had an understanding in that field about vibration. He was relating, of course, to different frequencies, and the Earth has a specific frequency. And one of the things I learned out of that, maybe to have your comment on it, is he said, You need to get grounded. You cannot just be in buildings. You can't just, you need to get your shoes and socks off and curl your feet, your toes in the grass. Uh, uh, How do you see that?
I once heard of an explanation, I'll call it an explanation. I
Mm,
believe in that 100% because we are cut off from the earth due to the souls of our sheep, which cuts off our soul from the connection of the earth itself.
Great.
We are not necessarily meant to walk around with shoes or even clothes half of the time. I think our connection from the earth has been severely cut off due to technology and technological advancements. I'm not saying that technology cannot be a tool that helps us move forward, but I think that we are so engulfed in we're so engulfed in things that we think are great for us, but they really disconnect us from nature. That I think it causes us to even have a disconnect where we're at and at times with one another. So when it comes to connecting with the earth, we are few and far in between of where we should be, meaning that we are very far from, I feel like, or we are becoming very disconnected from where our roots are at, right? As humans. But moving forward,
Yeah.
what I also think is us not being connected to the earth in the way that we should be dilutes our evolution, right? Like really puts our evolution at a standstill and makes us stagnant. I've had a conversation with somebody recently about the advancements of AI. And they were like, no, I think AI could be a really good tool. And I was like, yes, it can. I do not disagree with that. But what concerns me is the crutch, right? The crutch that's being built out of AI, where people are going to start taking those challenges that challenge your mind and assigning it over to AI to where you're not really challenging yourself as much anymore. And a good example of that is your phone, right? In my phone, I could text a couple of words and my phone will auto correct the words to the point where I don't feel the need to have to go ahead and even type out the words in the correct way. But luckily for myself, I still do write, right? So for me writing, I have to get it correct or else I'll be scratching, using whiteout. Just really, I can't auto correct on a piece of paper, but I'm trying to say. So I do see that leading back to where we started with the connection to the earth. I see that as one of the key components to our continuous evolution as human beings, which is constantly being unblocked in today's world.
AI help us think, or will we move the other direction and think we don't have to think? And we lose something that is so human and so valuable to our future is the ability to create, to think. I don't see that in the schools these days, even. I see that some of the breakdown we're getting and the education level is just not what it used to be. It's not coming from an older generation. It's the fact that you take the math skills and this and how history is taught. There's a lot going on right now. We're really in a motion taking off faster than maybe we do need to slow it down. Remember, a lot of experts were saying in the AI field, we need to take a 6-month pause. They might be right about that because we're losing our grounding if we move too fast. Now, how does this relate to who we are? And that we become the humankind of no matter where you come from, you have something to contribute, something beautiful to offer. How do we get there? Will AI actually improve or will it throw us into a more of a warrior state sentiment where we're still afraid of our neighbors across the ocean and that sort of thing? Will we come together on it or will it go the other
Well,
way? Your work is very important in that field. What you're doing is a very base thing, I think, that
yes,
reaches that ground.
my answer is very dynamic. And so I would like to start by saying that I was recently reading a news report or a news article that came up about, I forgot his last name. I believe his first name is George. He is the godfather of AI with Google, and he recently stepped down. And his
Oh, yeah.
concerns that he expressed in the article was that after working with AI for so many years, he thought that we would be 40 to 50 years out to it being a heavy component in our daily lives. And so he recently did an update where he said this will happen in 10 to 20 years. And what that is called, in my opinion, is a quantum leap. When technology starts to make quantum leaps, there's not much room for us to tame it or try to get it under control to where it's with us, but not above us, right? And let me lead this over to another side of the point that I want to prove to bring it whole. Due to the technological way that we use computers and social media and us wanting instant gratification in our lives, AI could give us instant gratification because the human mind has been recently trained to be attached so deeply to instant gratification. I see AI getting true leg up because we want things now, we want it done. Now nobody wants to no longer take the time that it takes to develop something and to build it out and to learn, right? Because that's the beauty of it all is the process, the journey, the lessons that you learn within that. And so I see it becoming more of something that supersedes us and something that stands next to us or stands with us over time. And you are right to say that some of these AI programs do need to slow down before we totally end up like the Terminator and then we'll be in the Matrix.
Not funny when some of these fantasy movies come true. They're based on forward thinking or where the future could go, and no one knows really. But we,
Nobody knows.
I remember when Dick Tracy was the big deal in cartoons and the cartoon and the newspaper and stuff. I'm a little older, but he had a watch and he had the TV on his watch. Today we'd shrug our shoulders at something like that. Back then, it was so futuristic, nobody thought it would actually be possible. And we're already living these type of things. You don't have to go back too far to start seeing the progress and the modernization and the level of what kind of work is going to be in the future. A lot of things are so mechanized and with robots and AI that it may take physical labor out of things. So if we're not taking care of our bodies in a way that is nutrition and and health wise, we are going to melt into the landscape, and AI might be the bane of the future. We might have a fight on our hands there, Troy. I don't know.
We may, but I wanted to bring up a serious concern that I want everybody to consider. One that I did some research on and I had to come to terms with. So there's a thing called transhumanism, which is a
Oh,
blending
right.
of AI with the human body just for us to keep up with computers or machines. But that would lead to possibly a human being hacked, is what I would say, right? And so I want people to really take the time to consider what that may look like in the future, because after me looking at the WGS, the World Government Summit of 2022 and this year, 2023, they are back once again. They did talk about by 2030 that a good portion of humans would be integrating with AI to keep up with the changes that will be happening. And so when you go into transhumanism, what a lot of people don't know is you are no longer considered human. And so you do not have access to human rights because there are no rights that have been made up for transhumanism as yet. And so this is something that I think everybody should really consider as we continue moving forward into what I call the age of the machine.
It just sounds like a loss of free will. America's a very unusual constitution and governance in the sense of how it was put together to try and protect us against tyranny. But so AI could get pretty tyrannical. It could go the way of controlling every move you make. And
Uh,
whatever the people on top are thinking, whether they're right or wrong, they're pressing the buttons on all of us. And that's usually not a good thing. They make up opinions about, oh, we need a smaller population because the earth can't handle it. When in reality, it could be very well the opposite. Well, 95% of the land isn't even lived on.
but it's up to, and this is where another thing that is troublesome in the age of the machine, right? Is where information
Uh-huh.
could be it could be, I want to say transmutated, but I'm not going to say that word. It can be toyed with. and manipulated. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, that's a good way
Um,
to say it.
to where we don't, a lot of us without our due, excuse me, or just do, meaning that doing our research, without us doing that, we won't know. We're always in the blind. The fact that we have things like deep fake and a lot of false news out there and a lot of even false research, because there's even been times where Google was wrong, okay, about certain things, and they said it was one thing and it wasn't. So we have to be careful. And this leads back to the emotional intelligence, because a lot of what you feel, and this is for the people that will be watching this, a lot of what you feel is real. I have myself went through certain things that I felt and they has come true. So I want everybody that will be watching this to know that it's a smoking screen, it's a smoking mirror, and what you read cannot always be trusted, especially when it may be coming from certain sources, even if the sources seem like they can be trusted. So I want people to start to challenge themselves and really dive into what they feel, because there's a lot of people feeling the same thing. They may not know how to express it, and other people may not talk about it because we're moving into a PC society where you can be basically put on display for speaking your mind a certain way. And groupthink is so big right now. But if you feel it, there are other people out there who feel it too and see it. And I just want them to know that you're not alone and that you should trust your feelings more as the days
It's
progress.
tough for people who have families to stand up and risk it all, to stand on their integrity, their beliefs, and say so. Whether they're 100% correct or not, there's actually shades of truth, I guess you could say. But we
I
get
like
to
that
these
one. That
days,
was 50
but,
Shades of Truth.
yeah, it kind of leads to our children being able to self-actualize and become
Mm,
what their dreams are. If you're playing the violin, you don't need somebody to be playing the violin better than you. That's a machine.
mm,
You're playing from the human spirit. Being able to express the human spirit in music, in art, in poetry. We're seeing AI kind of move in those directions, but they're really just mimicking whatever they find that's data of what's happened in the past and
mm.
trying to put it together and extrapolate it. Is it really thinking? I don't think they're really there, but I think they have enough power behind these machines where control might be the ultimate goal.
Mm.
And that might be where we run into problems and that sort of thing. Is the world
Yes.
really in a position to globalize? I don't think so. Is the world
I
ready
mean,
to work with each other? Yes, it can be done. But the leaders that are there that have this type of power, and even our country here, has a real problem with the military industrial complex. And we're finding out some truths that are not fun to find out about ourselves and about that we
mm,
weren't in control. And it's not where the American people's heart is at all. It's
mm,
all about power and money over the color revolutions that the United States has been involved with over the world, not toppling governments. And it's not anything more to do than power, money, resources. That's a
mm.
different kind of imperialism, isn't it? Compared to what was going on when we had wooden ships. Whole new level, whole new
I,
level.
I call it a oligarchy in a totalitarian regime. That's
Yeah.
what is the mix that's going on. A totalitarian, excuse me, I messed that, I butcher that word up all the time. But for those who are watching this, you get what I'm trying to say, right? It's just
Of
supreme
course. Of course.
control, but not only supreme control through just another human's hands, but this is also leading towards a machine that will not feel what we feel or understand the connections that we are able to gain, right? So that's one thing though that I must say, especially about the platform that I am making, is that it preserves the human essence, which will be greatly needed in the future, for sure.
The human project, you may call it that, is really trying to bring people together in a way that they hear each other, that they really understand each other, that the same vibration runs through both when they're speaking with each other, that they're hearing each other and they're learning from each other. Because no one goes through life really in business, for example, and does it by themselves. It takes building a team that believes in the goals, believes in what you're trying to accomplish. It could be as little thing like a restaurant where if the team is pulling together, the people coming in find the service and the food and everything wonderful because the people are wonderful. They love what they're doing and they take pride in it versus the old side of things where you have the type of people that are there to punch a clock and they don't actually like the work and they throw in negativity in there. So building a team effort and getting people on there, it's really a spiritual level with the emotional intelligence has to break through so that if I'm asking, as I say, an owner of a restaurant, if I'm asking someone to change their habits of the way they do things, I have to first show that I care about that person at a more deeper emotional level. And when I learned to do that, I understood why the people working with me far better. And I got 100% buy-in when I expressed it. You cannot assume that people know that you're good to them or that you pay them better than anywhere else. It's much deeper than that to pull a team together that pulls in the same direction.
Yes, it is. I myself see business as a spiritual thing also, or a spiritual entity. Also, quick understanding is human. I oftentimes tell people that I don't own human, right? So human would have been here whether it was brought through me or not. You'll just be
Mhm.
talking to a different face. That'll be it, right? There's a difference between ideas that you think of and ideas that come to you. Human was an idea that came to me. The Ghost Project was an idea that I thought of. And it feels different, right? That's like the flow between two individuals. So that we can revert back to earlier in the conversation when I was like how people see eye to eye and energy connects. In terms of even business, human, it just felt like a flow. The idea started building itself through me. It was like, I need to be here in this space and time for whatever's coming next. This is going to be very important. So I do understand when you're speaking about people you bring on that understand the mission, understand the vision, and are willing to help you push that forward, right? I just recently hired someone, a virtual assistant who works with me now, and I'm in talks with other people who I feel see what human is, understand what it is, and willing to push that forward. And it takes a special group of people to do that because our business model is not all just about financial gain, right? It's about putting people first, and then we know the money will follow. Yes, it can be a bit frustrating, especially when you still have to pay people, but it's something that is required to make sure that human gets the proper life span that it needs to get people to interact with it and to come on share this story.
It's about resonating with others, isn't it?
Indeed. That's it.
That's really it. It's resonating. And when you have that, you have understanding. And I would say the ability to have different perspectives totally diametric to each other, but find their way to resonate, to reach something. There are polar opposites versus the situation where you have evil. And evil can be defined in hatred and a lot of very negative types of things that basically it can be defined as evil. That is diametric to the goodness in people and that sort of thing. So there is a human fight going on, I think I'm saying, between those two aspects of it might actually be coming down to that. The people that resonate together are going to be able to pull together and not just survive, but thrive. The people that don't and are out there raising hell are lost souls. And we can only put our best foot forward to help them get back on their feet again from the standpoint of having a mindset that the world is good because they're part of making it good now. That's the whole thing, of course, of the problems we have with, say, prison, for instance, where the punishment is evil. And it's to the point where people come out of there they're not going to go look for a job or to contribute to society. They're going back the same ways. They just learned how to do it even better.
Mhm.
Versus the type of a system where you have to build on resonance. And when everyone's in tune, then you can really teach a person to fish for themselves as
Right.
opposed to trying to take everybody else's fish because they're hungry. And we understand that. We have ways of trying to help people that,
When it
that
comes
don't have food. When it gets down to that level.
when it comes to the prison system, it's what's lacking, in my opinion, is rehabilitation. Right. You put someone in for a crime, you don't actually teach them to be part of society. You're just putting them in once you're taking them out of a situation where they were already fighting to survive in most cases, right? Some people made certain decisions that go beyond fighting to survive. But in most cases, based on my experience, it's fighting to survive. Then you put them in another situation where they're still fighting to survive. It's just close quarters. And then they come out, and because they may have caught a charge that doesn't allow them to integrate in society in a certain way, they're still fighting to survive. But where's the rehabilitation to where you tell them, hey, this is where you went wrong, but this is how you can be a better person, and we're actually genuinely willing to give you a chance. But we could go on and on about the back end of the prison system and what actually runs, how those gears actually turn, right? From people who are investing in it to the prison pipeline, right? How certain things are designed in certain ways to already program the mind or pre-program the mind to go to prison or put themselves in scenarios where they go to prison. So it's a very interesting way of looking at life, right?
Yeah.
When we look at just us as humans and how we need to be rehabilitated, that's why we have therapy. But then we keep going through certain things in life that put a lot of strain on that societal pressures, on us having to like work and try to make ends meet and inflation going up, right? So sometimes it's really hard to get that space where you are able to be rehabilitated within your own self outside of just prison and that system looks like.
The military used to have it pretty right with the way they would bring in young people, and break them way down, and then build up their character and their belief system and their moral compass. All of that, the military used to be good at that. I
Mhm.
can't say for sure from what I've seen lately that those are the goals. It's There's a brotherhood there or a sisterhood, you could say now that the women get into it too, but it's all the definitions are being torn up right now. I
Mhm.
guess I'm digressing on this. The
Mhm.
definition of words is being twisted. These are the things that came out of communism. These were the methods they did. You go back through history and look at changing the words and creating division and stirring up hatred when it really wasn't there anymore.
Where
It's really the twisted nut right now.
I feel like I tell people that at times I read and I don't speak it, but I read and hear things in reverse, right? Because at times what's good is actually bad, and what's bad is actually good, right? It's just either good. Somebody said it in a song that I was listening to. It's good times for bad people, and it's bad times for good people, right? So there's a lot of reversing in order that's going on right now, and people just have to be conscious of where they're putting themselves at. I myself don't have anything against some of the practices I see in the new age, but it's not for me. And I've noticed that a lot of them at times lead people down the wrong path, even though it starts off as one way. When you get towards the tail end of that path that they're going down, it's some dark stuff that may be waiting for them. So you just really got to be independent in your thought, understanding what your emotions are telling you about certain things. Because at times what we do is we feel something from the person that and
Yeah.
then we ignore it. We're like, oh no, let me try to give this person another chance. And that's okay. But you need to know who to do that with and who not to do that, what to do that with and what not to do that with. There's certain things that I'm just not going to leave my door open for it to come into my circumference. Right.
Well, there was a time generations back where you could leave your door unlocked and no one's going to touch. In fact, every neighbor's looking out for you. These
I
days,
remember this.
we see a lot of craziness going on, even with neighbors, the stuff that gets pulled. So there is something to deal with our basic morality and how we look at things. I don't know if that's a breakdown of less people following religion, any type of religion, because they're all about setting a moral compass for people. I think that's one of the basis that they try for. We always get to think,
Well,
Christians have 20 different denominations within the Christians, and a lot of times they're just not working together. They're fighting each other. It's crazy.
I
Even
think
that is not settled.
I think we have to really take a look at something here, and that's called program. That's why they
Yeah.
call TV, your TV program, returning back to our regular scheduled program, right? On TV, right?
Yep.
Media has been the greatest weapon on the man. It was never a bomb or a gun. And that was two-way of propaganda, right? The guy who owns Netflix, his father is the one who's responsible for propaganda. Okay. So just to give you some back pretense of what I may or may not understand. So when I looked at programming, I looked at the diluting on society. You have media pitting people against each other, causing division, whether it may be racist, man, woman. Right now, I think the man and woman part is really big, especially within the community that reflects me, right? Where we're taught like, oh, don't trust these women, don't do that. And these women are now being taught to live almost like men, go out, sleep around, do what you do there. And I'm not saying this is everyone, but I've watched how the programming has changed over the years, even from the music that we listen to, the messages that are in music that we listen to, and how that translates because some people don't have that safeguard in their mind to be like, this is just music. I'm not going to go out there and actually live this out. And then you have a lot of people who don't even understand what the programming is and what's happening to them. And so they're just, a lot of people are caught in the midst of that. A lot of them, a lot of people do not have a safeguard over their mind. And it's something that takes a while to establish. I am not necessarily perfect at it, but I have this long, while simultaneously homeless for an extremely long time to where I have developed at least a filter where I'm like, I can't let all of this into my mind. And then last but not least, one programming that's been swaying people like heavily is fear. Oh, if I fear, if I don't do this, I'm judged. Fear is, if I don't go along with the tide, my people will outcast me, or things of that nature. Just all these different types of fears that are programmed into the mind in minute ways that have people making some decisions that may not be great. Perfect example for me is like dating, right? I have friends who have told me to do certain things within dating, and I'm not going to say that it was necessarily bad advice, but the advice may not be fitting to who I am as a person, what route I want to take in the connectivity that I would like to have with another individual that I would like to be intimate with, right? So I think just encouraging independence or but unity is one crazy dynamic, right? Like you want the person to still be an individual, but you also want them to be part of the community. But you want to, as an individual, you want them to have a great level of discernment, right? What is for me? What is not for me? Implement critical thinking to it. Let me really think about what's being said here and try to look beyond the veil, right? Because most people cannot look beyond the veil. So,
Oh, that's a huge amount to digest there. We'll have everyone thinking about that, maybe even sleeping on it, and coming up with their own a bit of truth of how they can make their lives and their families better.
while still
You
being an
mentioned,
active part into, while still being a
right,
commodity to the community, you know what I'm saying? While still
uh,
be
exactly.
active in the community too. So, yes.
Yeah, contributing to the good. Yeah. And earning your way through it. In fact, you don't make a dollar without helping somebody else,
I
you
literally went
know?
through that today earlier when I sold the shirt. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there
100%.
you go.
That is 100% correct.
There you go.
Yes.
That's true. The definition of what a woman is really something that you would never think anyone would ever even question. And yet we have a less than 1%, maybe 2% at the most, that fit into this group of people that they put together, the long letters and everything. I- uh, I'm not going to try and talk about that per se. Some of those within that group don't agree with some of the things that are going on. And I certainly can
100%.
take a strong stand against children going through hormone therapy and stuff become the other
Mhm.
sex. When it's religion and belief in the Bible and this sort of thing does tell me this is wrong. It's just plain wrong. But when
Mhm.
you look at society as a whole, I'm not there to abuse a person that is trans or they are who they are, but that is an adult who has made those decisions. A child picks up the wrong toy, and all of a sudden the parents think they're the other sex, and then they want to push it so they look like they're politically correct. This whole thing is getting so wrong. It's one thing
And
to kill children in other ways, abortion. Why did Sanger and those people, the abortion clinics, put them all into black neighborhoods? They put them right there because they had a goal and they wanted to make it look like this was the thing. So, did the freedom of women's sexual freedom lead to this, or because it actually affects women that might be in an situation where having a child just isn't something made the decision to play in a very dangerous game dealing with
mm,
humanity and the growth of
mm,
humanity and building families. You go back to the 50s and 60s, and black families were extremely strong. They were
mm,
doing better than other races
mm,
as far as family unity. As soon as the government got involved, there's a political faction in there that really
mm,
wanted to have an automatic vote kind of system and to turn people into handouts as opposed to making your own way, becoming something. They took it away. Wow.
You touched on several things. So one, when it comes to the kids and what's being put in front of the kids is the suppression of freedom regarding innocence. So I call it like the freedom of innocence, right? Where,
That's really good. Oh,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
the
I see
freedom
where
of
you're going with that.
innocence where it's not up to this child to make grown decisions at an age where it shouldn't work,
True.
is what I would like to say. I'm just going to make it real brief there. I'm not going to dive too deep into that. I'm not afraid to speak about it though. And that's my stance is you should have their freedom of innocence. A child should be loved as a child. It shouldn't even be worried about sex or sexual orientation. I just wanted to go ahead and also say that I'm not, for those who will be watching this, I am not directing this towards the community. I'm directing this towards what I feel is an agenda that it's not really serving us well as a population. Now, I'm going to say it one more time so when people could definitely sleep on this tonight is think about the freedom of innocence and what that looks like. It could look one example of that is the animals, right? The birds that we see outside, they have freedom of innocence at already. How come nobody's trying to more from their dog? A kid in itself is in its natural state. Let it live its life. Let's keep all of our affairs out of their life. All right. Until they're older and then we want them to learn about the world. But at a young age, when I was young, I didn't worry about it because, and as I was taught, was to stay out of grown folks' business. And that's what I continue to do, right? Actually, I'm not a kid anymore, but that's what I did, excuse me, when I was younger, right? I say
Right.
stay out of grown folks' business because I love minding my business as an older guy now, right? I really don't like getting involved in too many other people's affairs or business. I do understand the value in that. But outside of that, it's just really, if there's one thing people take away from this conversation outside of the whole slew of other things I've said for you to reflect on is think about the freedom of innocence that a kid has, how, what that looks like and why would you want that to be impacted,
It
especially when
it
you were
deserves
younger
to
and
be defended.
you did not do that yourself. So what makes it so deserving that this upcoming generation is exposed to that?
Wow. It deserves to be defended.
It does. And then another thing that you was talking about in terms of the political stance about how communities have been under siege, right? Especially communities where the people reflect myself, is that, hey man, it did happen. Is this something? But what I want to address is Not necessarily what are we going to do about it. I don't want to be like in that headspace, but I don't want people to continue reliving their trauma. I think that's a very important thing. There's these moments that come out that we tell our stories and things of this nature. And after a while, I just was like, this is reinforcing trauma. Think about it. And this is an unpopular opinion I'm going to get ready to say. Black History Month, right? Every year it comes around. So we have 1 month to celebrate a history that is extremely vast that has helped build where we're at, right? We are a prominent
Oh,
force
yes.
in why this country is established the way it is. Right? But just think about it. Most of the people you hear about were assassinated, right? So in a subconscious way, it's telling you like, yeah, you can go for this, but this is where you're somewhat capped, right? And then you look at our communities. And now I understand people who watch this may feel totally different. And I respect that. But it's something that I can, me myself, as a person that reflects my community, I can no longer live with that. I no longer could sit there and constantly regurgitate things on a mental level that leave me in a traumatized state of mind when at the end of the day, I'm human and I could also now create my own legacy from what was done before. It doesn't mean I don't pay attention to the past, but I don't want to continue highlighting it in a way that I feel is negative. Okay. And so that's why when I run across a lot of people in the community that I reflect, when we run across one another and we having these conversations about, hey, this and you gotta be like this. And I respect that. But I oftentimes challenge those people. What about the future? What are we doing about the future? What has happened has already taken place. I cannot go back and change that. But what I can do is build something that goes into the future, right? That's why I'm mostly geared up for futurism. At times, I am ousted by the community that I reflect because I don't subscribe to many schools of thought or I subscribe to unpopular schools of thought when it comes to how we're going to approach that. It doesn't mean I want to be like, oh, it didn't exist, but it just doesn't resonate with me. And honestly, most of the time doesn't make sense to me to keep trying to relive subconscious traumatic events that do affect you to empower you, but that's still pain that you're carrying. And I
It
already have
is.
enough pain that I have to deal with in my current state, right? Like me going outside every day and seeing the current state of the world. I think that's enough outside of me constantly bringing up what has happened before. Like I said, to what you were saying about the community that we're under siege, I think one of the most prominent parts of history that we know of is Black Wall Street. What do you expect? Threaten a regime that has systematically built and put certain things into place for its benefit. Do anything in its power to uphold it. And unfortunately, we have been predominantly the victims of that, right? So, yeah, I
Our
mean,
manipulation.
right. So, redlining a whole bunch of other things that we could dive into. But I'm
Yeah.
going to, for the sake of conversation, keep this part pretty short because I do have a slew at times. I do have a slew, I think, of unpopular opinions that a lot of people will probably not see eye to eye with. But I've done my research on certain things, and I can definitely say that I think that it's time that we focus on the future and how we going to correct that. Because let me tell you something, especially as a person that reflects my community, if we do not, if we do not forget about this race card, I ain't saying act like it doesn't happen, that injustice still doesn't happen. I just spoke about the age of the machine at the beginning of this interview. The machine is not going to, it's not going to care whether you're white, black, Asian. It's not going to care. It's just going to do what it has to do. And that includes all humans, not just one
Wow.
human, okay, or one race of humans. So I once told somebody that we all have a fight that we choose, right? Some people choose the fight of religion. Some people choose the fight of politics. Some people choose the fight of race. All of these fights are important to those individuals. It doesn't make it one fight is not necessarily greater than the other. But I myself have been gearing up for my own fight. And that seems to be at the horizon as of right now. We're coming to a precipice.
It's definitely troublesome. I remember hearing Morgan Freeman. He was asked a question in an interview. It was about, what are we going to do about racism? And his fast, quick answer, it was just, oh, it's just basically said, stop talking about it. And he may have something there. It just took me by surprise because if you keep pounding away at it, you
I think it's
start
a
to get the
double-edged sword
extreme. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, the
because you have to
extremists
talk
are
about,
probably the hustlers that are out there
well,
making
no,
money off of it, and then there's the others that are need help.
you have to talk about it because people don't know how to. Some people really have a problem with being racist.
Yeah.
They don't know how to not. They don't know. Some of them are conscious and some of them are not conscious of what that looks like. And so that conversation, all that pain that is pent up from the people who have experienced that, I think needs to be spoken about to a
Sure.
degree. But once we have came to certain realizations, I feel like when we could accomplish a certain level of equality, then the conversation could dissipate. But until that moment, there are some things that need to be addressed because if we just brush it to the side and act like it's not happening, this still allows for systematic oppression to happen, you can say. So these are things that you have to keep in mind, just because that's like somebody saying,
It's not been an even
if
playing
people,
field. That it hasn't been. That's the truth.
people who don't say anything at all are the same exact as people who are doing the bad action, right? It's just, it's one and the same almost. Excuse me, that's not the exact same, but you basically the gist of what I'm stating here, right? So
Yeah.
this is something that you have to take into consideration. So when it leads back to what he was saying about not saying anything at all, I don't know if that's the best option. I think it takes a mix. This is a complex issue to a degree that is not one sided, it's dynamic. So you'll need multiple solutions for this one issue.
So maybe he was thinking about inflaming people as opposed to appealing to the bad side of hatred. Or you could say faith should be always over fear, faith
Mm,
over fear.
get
And
it
if
like
you
that.
lose that, you really have a tough road to hoe. So what we have to do with the people that have been hurt like this is we have to build up faith over fear. But that also means that the table, the game, it cannot be tilted. It should be on a level of, back to Martin Luther King, of a character, judged on your character, who you are. If I was to cut my hand here or my finger, and you cut yours, and we do a blood brother thing for fun, that blood is red. We're human. This other stuff outside is superfluous. It really is. But we
Mm.
don't see it that way. How do we get there? So what you're doing is really being able to help people with different perspectives understand each other. I mean, it was the definition of human, of the human project. And then have we talked enough about the ghost project?
Yeah, the Ghost
Did we cover
Project.
that?
Yes, we did in the beginning. The Ghost Project
We did.
is
Yeah.
private. It's definitely a private innovations company. And the reason why it's private is because I believe that the greatest currency in the world is ideas. You live underneath an idea. Your money is an idea. The system that you're in is an idea. Everything started off as an idea. And so
That's
that's why
currency.
people,
The
the
currency?
greatest currency in the world is ideas, right? So not
Got it. Got it.
fiat currency. The greatest currency in the world, in my opinion, is ideas. Then comes, I have a way of looking at it. Then comes a time and influence, right? So influence is also a major currency. That's why you have a lot of people running around now being influencers. Oh, but hey, I'm not one to say what is or what isn't correct. But yes, and so the Ghost Project focuses, like I said before in the beginning of this interview, the but the Ghost Project believes that an idea can change the fate of tomorrow for a better day. And that project, once again, that we're doing is Human, the multimedia platform where we encourage people to find truth in another person's perspective, bringing people together one culture at a time, forming a global.
Ah, I've seen one area that has helped people grow that is what you call masterminds or brain trust, where They basically are signing non-disclosure agreements so that whether it's personal or business or an idea that you're floating, that it stays within. And that's it's made into a legal agreement, basically, of how you conduct yourself within a mastermind. And I
Mm,
spent 2 years in one, and a lot of times the problems, the humanness, the problems people are facing, whether it's a husband and wife thing, or it's a partner that let you down and where they're at now, and how are they gonna make a comeback, and getting the help of 7 or 8 other people that have expertise in different areas of life, being able to contribute and help that person along. We probably need a lot more of that type of organizing ourselves. So these little tribes going around, an influencer could be a great thing if it's based on goodness and some kind of a level of morality and coming up to see how do you contribute to everyone else out there. If you could put 8, 9 people together, you don't need any more than that really from what I've seen. Otherwise it gets a little cumbersome, but those 8 or 9 people working together can make great things happen. Doors open that wouldn't have been open had you not had the time to actually get with each other and spend that time together all day, once a month at least, where you're not leaving the room other than maybe the food being catered or having stopping to have a meal together. But an all-day affair like that, where you're taking a couple of the members and they're putting forward their ideas, their hopes, their dreams, their problems on the table, and the other 6 people are helping each person there. One person's up first, then the second
mm,
person, so the day is divided in half. This is the type of masterminds I've had. And I started to think there for a moment that what you're doing with the Ghost Project has some similarities with that. I don't know enough about it, but it's just the fact that it's about innovation and protection of ideas. The people within that group are working in a mastermind way, but every mastermind or brain trust, you might call it, has its own formation and maybe makes its own little rules and, whatever to work together. And some of the greatest ones in history were famous people that actually work together to make things happen.
mm,
The American economy and when manufacturing was coming around and all those things, there was several magnates that got together and actually had their brain trust. It was a pretty powerful one. It lasted for several years, and they
interesting.
were able to build industries with it. So if you can take an idea and build an industry out of it, it's because of the teamwork of pulling people in the same direction with the same mission, the same goals to help make something happen. And you could be doing something different, but you're taking the time out to be part of something bigger than yourself.
Mm,
And I think what you're doing in the field of what you're doing when you've divided up the human part of communication, that's incredibly important these days because that's where there's a breakdown. And you're right in the thick of things, Troy. So I'm happy to have had the honor to talk to you because I kind of understand
thank you.
what you really have something of a higher value that you're going after
Yes.
to bring it back into helping humans be human and handle things. My feeling or gut feeling here isn't about fight or flight. It's got some heart in it. It's about what do we do about the family of tomorrow and what we used to have and how strong it is to bring up children. Right now, parents are starting to do a lot more homeschooling because they're not seeing results. All that money and that the Americans throw into education, K through 12, coming out without an education.
Mm,
They don't know how to add. They don't know, they don't know a lot of things, but people should. And it's certainly about the civics of a country aren't really taught how the government works to be able to participate. It's for the young people to know how and why we're a republic and not a democracy.
mm,
How representative government works, really works, so that it goes from the ground level of what the school boards are out there running the game on what your kids learn, our kids learn. And we're not paying attention because it takes 2 parents to make a freaking living. Either you have to live on less and decide, we don't need all those things. What we need is to spend those years with the children and divide up the work here And this femininity needs to, I think, needs to come back in a way. And there's a lot of women out there that are feeling it. They're finding out when they're 35 years
Oh
old,
man,
Troy.
this guy,
They're
this guy
finding
is
out when they're
funny.
35.
That is such a touchy subject that you just brought up in terms of the
I know.
femininity of the
I feel I
world.
can trust you to talk
Um,
to you, though.
oh
That's
no,
the
no,
thing.
I'm open. So as a young man, was getting back into dating just a little bit, just dipping my foot in the water, trying to see what it is because I haven't been dating in a long time. I am noticing that the feminine aspect and even the masculine aspect of things has been under siege, right? I feel like I've talked to a lot of young women. I'm always been pretty reserved and calm, but it's, a certain type of aggression. And when it comes to certain men, it's a little bit more feminine than I guess you could say usual. So again, we're leading back to the reverse of things, right? And how things are right now, it's like we're going into the upside down, like that part of Stranger Things. For those who have watched Stranger Things, they'll know what I'm talking about. But yes, we're going into what I like to call like the upside down. So it's very interesting. And when you talk about the structure of the family and not to relay this over to how this impacts the structure of the family is you have women that are like competing as men to be men. And then you have men that are not really living up to the standards of what a man meant in the days that I was raised, right? Come home, you put food on
What
the table, you think of that nature, but
you would say being a good provider then, being a good
being a
provider
good
and a
provider
protector.
and a protector. But the thing that I want to say was another thing that the people don't pay attention to is the fact that the financial, especially within the community that I reflect, I love saying that the community that I reflect, that's going to be so. In terms of the community that I reflect, I noticed that the financial gains have went up significantly with one. And so we're living in a day and age where women are earning more than men. And they feel, a lot of women I run into feel like the man needs to still be making more than them, which is unfair because there are not as many opportunities in certain cases for men to make as much. And it's just the illusion. Again, I always call it, we live underneath a lot of illusions. And so you have this illusion that's upheld really well is that, oh, you always have to go for the six-figure guy and this and that. And I'm like, a lot of people are not making six figures. I don't want to sound like a YouTuber. It's what I've noticed in my day-to-day life. But watch this, but you have to make sure, people have to make sure is how do you be, instead of who's winning the most money, how do we, let's push that all to the side and let's address how do we be an effective partner? I got it from a movie with Morgan Freeman, I believe, called Oblivion. And the AI was asking Tom Cruise and someone else that another actor that
Oh,
played the young lady that was with him
great
inside
movie.
his machine, right?
Yeah.
And every
Yeah.
time they got up and things kind of looked, at the end of the day, she asks, are you an effective team? And they'll be like, yes. The moment that they said no, obviously the machine came and took them out. So we're taking each other out by not agreeing to be an effective team. All right. And that's where it stands. Enough of this. I don't like
Wow.
this rhetoric that I
Wow.
hear on
Yeah.
YouTube and all these other places about all this, that, and this. And it's a lot of rhetoric going on. I'm not discounting these people and the points that they make, but I don't hear nobody talking about how do we become an effective team? How can two people, no matter who's the breadwinner of the house, how can we make this work? It's okay that he doesn't make enough as long as he's actually taking care of some duties in the house and he's not just napping around. Maybe he might be working for something. It's okay that every once in a while, like the woman, you don't want to cook. Every once in a while, if you don't want to cook, maybe I have to cook. Maybe you go out. It's okay. It's not going to make you less of a man or woman. But the problem is people don't know how to play into their strengths and address their weaknesses. Like I just to my virtual assistant about this earlier today. Prior to this interview, I had a meeting with my virtual assistant and I spoke to her about something that I was like, this could be improved upon, but I do notice your strengths and I want you to play into your strengths. So
That's it.
what does
That's
an effective
encouragement.
team look like? What does that look like? Are you saying, can you ask me a question?
I was just saying that's effective encouragement.
Yes,
Very good.
indeed. I didn't read a book on this, right? I didn't read a book on how to be a leader. I just understood how to communicate with people. In
Yeah.
what way, after trial and error of now me, because I went to 2 or 3 teams that I had for the Ghost Project that were not really the best. And now it doesn't mean that they were good for the time in which we existed. I don't want to put people down because I learned. But moving forward, though, is what does an effective team look like and how can we play into our strengths? And I think if as man and woman, right? And then the strain on the roles, the role of being a man when in society, it's at this point, it's not catering to men like that. It's not in terms of the financial gains of what it used to be. So those roles are even strenuous and under attack. And then what it is to be a woman too, being feminine and cooperating with the man in the way that you may want to be submissive. If you don't want to be submissive, that's totally up to you. I'm not judging anybody for that. I think everybody has their own path in life, right? But if we want to talk about the strains that are being put on people to the point where even myself as a man, I'm like, I don't want to date because I'm still struggling a bit financially and just trying to figure out what that looks like, trying to get business off the floor. But me, I still want to find someone who enjoys, who likes me, for me. I think when it comes down to all the riffraff that's being put out there on the internet, I really want people to consider what this like to me look like. And when you start to see it from that perspective of what is an effective team looks like, it'll be easier because you're not living up to societal norms and societal standards. And don't let it be
Well,
something that
yeah.
is too out of the way. Now, if you want a 6-figure guys, okay, cool, that may look like an effective team for you, but there's way more effective teams that I feel like realistic in the reach of the common man and woman. All right, because that's who I'm addressing by this. All right. Everybody else is out there addressing 6-figure guys. And this, I'm not going to say that there are not people out there who are addressing the common man and women, right? But I don't see them approaching it from which I'm approaching it now. And so I'll take care of this responsibility. You take care of that. I'm step up and do this one day. You take care of that. I had a couple that I interviewed on Human and they have a rotating relationship where sometimes the man is doing great and sometimes the woman is doing great. And they switch in between those roles. They don't use their masculine or feminine side of the relationship, but they understand when to allow the other person to lead because that's them being effective.
That's working out the responsibilities that fit in the right order. They're prioritizing their lives together. And sometimes the guy's going to be batting cleanup and maybe doing the cooking. And the woman says, don't touch the laundry. You get these type of rules or home rules between couples that they try and figure it out. Not all do. A lot of men, a problem. I think the alpha males, like you say, you're 6'2", you're in the six figures. You're right. There's probably 80, 90% of the women are chasing that. And then they're looking for the bad boy, the exciting. I want adventure. I want to have a great time. But when they start to hit 28, they start realizing they're aging in a situation where their eggs are going to start dropping on the time they're 30. By the time 35, it's harder to have children. And all of that start late. So the women that have gone for the career end up with a dog for their pet, for their child. And you see a lot of that. They love that. They'll spend a fortune on the
I'm
pet
not gonna
as
lie.
well because
I
that's the
see,
child.
I see it's hard for me to see something wrong with that because that's how people operate within their
No.
sphere of understanding. Hold on, this.
Yes.
So people
Yes.
have their
Right.
sphere of understanding. I'm going to teach the audience about that too. So a lot of people operate within what they know, their life experiences, what they know, and also we're going to add like programming to that because that's part of that also. So if that's the way people want to live. Okay, but it's not what we're meant to do. And I want to make a
Yeah.
distinction between that because I don't want to sit here and judge people's lives. I don't want this to turn into a pointing finger kind of
Oh,
conversation.
of course not. Of course
I
not.
want this, I
I
want this
mean,
to
everyone
remain
deserves love, and if that's where
as
they
men,
find it,
if
yeah,
that's where they find it, right? But that's not what we're designed. We're not even designed to be as humans. We're not.
that's
Um,
true.
and
That's so
so,
true.
because like I told somebody I was working with somebody the other day, I was like, if you were designed to be alone, we'll just all be there'll be way less humans and we'll be all in the middle of a cave somewhere, not around each other, just doing what we're going to be and our thumbs together, just so it's really just people really, and I struggle with this sometimes too, because it's hard to connect people, especially in a world where you feel like a lot of what's being put out there and the expectations that you may have to live up to are partially unrealistic and offering a fantasy that people are like, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling people to settle for things, but I'm also be like, be realistic about your expectations. I'm not going to chase a young lady that, yeah, I'm not just going to chase certain, I'm not going to get into a certain prototype, right? But there's certain type of woman that if they want a certain lifestyle, I know that's not me. I'm not flashy. I'm not going to show up with a very expensive car. I don't see the point of it. Is it cool to probably rent one and have a good time sometime? Yeah, things could be used in a wiser way. So we live in a society where, like I once said in the strip club, it was my first time going, I was looking around and I saw these people throwing money and I was like, well, this money could be used a better way. And it just, the phrase I came up with is it's a lot of what it looks like compared to what it actually is. And due
Mhm.
to social media, we have a lot of people that are living what it looks like compared to what it actually. One of the campfire sessions we'll be having in the future is called Lack of Transparency Isolation Through Social. Because we are very much isolated and people are very much lonely. And and it's, the title speaks for itself. There is a lack of transparency where people are not being vulnerable, but it's hard to be vulnerable on a platform that is, where most platforms, excuse me, are narcissistic and just play into the bright moments.
It's affecting young men for sure. The suicide rate is out of hand. What's
Yeah.
going on with young men? It's the expectations are set so damn high. When I grew up in California, Troy, and then San Diego, not LA, but further south, but going out on dates, my experience back then was by the end of the day, the girl has figured out what car do I drive? Do I own my own house? What kind of money you make? What kind of job do you have? That these were like they're qualifying you because are you material for something more long term or are you or can I do better? And that to me was built on materialism. And that always bothered me that so many things were built on materialism rather than goodness and the times of walking down the beach with you on in the wet sand together, getting real with each other as opposed to being worried about stuff. So I did find the right women that I could have a great time with, and money wasn't the big deal. We
But
worked together with we didn't have much, but we worked together. That was the thing.
let me tell the story actually. So, for one, to address that, I still am at grips with this. I don't know whether, which way to go on, but I'm about to state. I'm still trying to figure this aspect out. But women have to look, especially in the primal way, have to look for the best suitor in terms of the kid, like if
It's
they have
true.
a kid
It's
with you.
true.
So it's kind of built into the nature for the most part to look for someone who's suited. Now, the problem is it gets exaggerated by materialism, is what I think. But moving forward, I was talking to my mom not so long ago. And one of the things that came up was, is love really unconditional? And when I asked the question, I was like, please be honest with people.
Oh,
And she
oh
said,
boy.
no, love is not unconditional. And I said, thank you for being honest because I already knew the answer because of the society we live in. It comes with conditions. Can you provide for me? It's very rare. I think that you find unconditional love. And then another young lady stated to me, she told me, like, I don't think love is unconditional altogether because if I'm in an abusive relationship, I'm not going to allow you to abuse me. And that's a condition that I have. For you. That's a boundary. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic of what unconditional love is. Unconditional love in existence doesn't really exist, especially within the society that we live in now. And that's just a really good question that I would like everybody who will wind up viewing this to even ask themselves: does unconditional love exist? So,
Well, in that instance, it certainly doesn't. The woman's right. The definition of unconditional love for a man, a lot of times when I growing up, was basically, I'm going to love you no matter what,
but the
no
truth
matter
is,
what.
can you really love the person no matter what? Let's say the person puts your life in jeopardy, are you still going to love that? Or and I know that's an extreme example, but it's
Well, if you
still
have it
honest
together,
to
you
me.
got to have it on both sides. I think maybe the definition is you got to have it on both sides. They got to feel the same way. So they would never put you in that position, not on purpose. Things do happen, but you have to come to an understanding for unconditional love to work. But there's an old saying that if you want unconditional love, get yourself a dog because it doesn't exist. So your mother's right in the sense of how she was stating that because things do happen. People do grow apart. How are they going to work through those things to keep that love there? The love will
Mhm.
always be there, but you find you can't live with the person anymore. You still love them, you still care about them. There's a lot of that. But I can't live with you. There is that kind of
Mm.
thing. So that's a tough one. But if 80% of the men have almost no women to go after because 80% of the women are going after the 20% of men, that leaves a lot of guys out. And if you're not 6 foot, you've got something against you there. If you're not
I
six
mean,
figures, you got something
to
there.
be
If
honest
you
with
not
you,
got that 6 figure car, you got some problem.
I'm
It's just crazy.
I'm not 6 foot. I don't have six figures, and I don't have that six-figure car.
Yeah.
But what I do
Right.
have is me, and what I wanted to tell people, right? And I have my aspirations, my vision, but that should also not necessarily be a selling point. But hey, we live in a certain society. What I'm going to tell people is really just
I think that's
be
attractive. I
your
think women are attracted to that.
indeed, but be
There's some
your.
women that are.
I'm not going to say. What should I say? Be yourself. And I know that sounds
Yes.
redundant, and people are like, "Oh no," but I read this book and you told me to do this, and I trust me. I've read a lot of seduction books and things like that back in the day. I thought it was pretty
Oh,
cool.
shit.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. But uh, as I grew older, some of the stuff I was like, okay, this may or may not apply to me. But one thing I did definitely come to understand was really what's meant for you, even though it sounds cliche, is meant for you. I find that most of the time when you try to force something into your life or try to push someone to be there, it just doesn't turn out well. Okay. And so if these
Yeah.
people, if these women are rejecting you, yes, it's good to have a good approach. Take care of yourself. These are definitely good advice. But if you find yourself manipulating your being to best fit the person that you are interested in, 9 times out of 10, that is not for you because the flow isn't there, right? The flow between you and this individual. And so you constantly be having to act a certain way, be a certain way for this individual to be into you. And then you'll turn around. Eventually, the act has to end, right?
Yeah.
And then when it
Yeah.
does, the relationship
It's
is
crushing.
over.
Yeah, it's
So
crushing.
I
You
tell
know?
most people, or I would tell most people, do not put yourself in a position to where you're acting or living through what I like to call an artifice, right? Which is an artificial projected version of you. Don't do that. Because the act can only last but so long and you'll find yourself back to where you once were, which is by yourself. I do.
You've heard the
Go ahead.
you've heard the word WYSIWYG?
No, I have.
It's for the type of editor for building websites. It's called a WYSIWYG, and what it stands for is what you get. I'm sorry, before I forgot about it, I wanted to share that with you because I knew that
This is
you
what
get a
you
little bit
get.
of a laugh out of that. But
Don't
and
get me
that's
wrong.
probably the way to be. That's a
Most of the
good way to
time,
live.
what you see is what you get now. There is certain moments where you peel back the cover of the book and you're amazed. You didn't know you didn't go in with many expectations, which is something that I'm learning now is to not have too many expectations for the next person and just try to free flow because I find that in that moment I'm way more surprised and way more in a state of enjoyment than when I come in
Mm.
with preconceived notions of who this person is and what I'm expecting them to do.
There's more happiness and discovery
Yes, indeed.
and
There's more
expectation.
happiness and discovery.
Wow. I want to go ahead and wrap up, but I would love to have another conversation sometime. I've learned a lot.
Indeed.
The work that you're doing with the human organization is well worth it at a time when it's most needed. The
Thank you.
work you're doing with the Ghost Project seems to mirror a little bit about bringing the right people together to make something really good happen.
Mhm.
Ideas you pull out of the air can become real. I've done it myself where I followed a dream, but I did the work to make that dream actually happen. But it wasn't money. It wasn't money that did it. It was putting the right people together in the right order and figuring out how to leverage things in a good way so that financially it had legs. And that was 6 months of figuring out every which way what would happen to according to the labor costs and the overhead costs and stuff like that at whatever level the business is at. Gotta know your numbers. You just do. What would you tell your younger self with
Mm.
all that you've been through and today?
I would tell my younger self to be more patient with myself, actually,
Oh, wow.
to take things literally one day at a time, enjoy the present moment as much as I can. It's not that I didn't do that before, but I think it's something that I'm actually learning more so now than before. Now that I have I'm in a different position in life. I'm not rich or
Oh,
anything
sure.
like that, nowhere near it. But I do have more time to think about certain things outside of running the business. In that, just be more patient with myself. And at the end of the day, allow sort of mistakes and to not be so judgmental of myself, beating myself up left and right mentally in terms of the mistakes that I made. At one point, I did struggle with perfectionism, me trying to get everything right the first time. But that recently surfaced actually when I started a business. Before that, when I was surviving, not so much. And I think just one more thing I'll probably tell myself, my younger self, is be wiser in the decisions that you make. Definitely be wiser in the decisions that you make. Yes, my decisions didn't lead me here, but I possibly could have been maybe greater along in life than what I am right now. It's not like I'm in a super bad position or anything, but there were certain things that took place that if I did make one or two decisions better, I feel like I would possibly be better off, but I don't regret those.
No, life
So,
has got its path to it. When you choose those paths, you can't regret. You went forward. But to know where you are about patience and taking the time to think things out. There was a story about Abraham Lincoln during the war, and mad as hell at one of his generals. I'm going to fire that SOB. He writes a letter to fire this guy, and it's all on fire when he puts in that letter. But he had a habit of doing one thing. He put it in the drawer, the desk drawer, and went back to it the next day. And that helped him a lot with his decision making with just that
mm,
small little habit.
amazing.
How you attack problems. So I thought that's something to share that kind of fits a lot about patience and the paths we take. My motto in life has been for a long time, I try to find it and work it, is to live to love and love to laugh. And just keep it simple and don't take yourself so seriously. So I needed to
That's
share
nice.
something with you back. So
I
that's
like that.
where I've arrived.
Which one came out of me during your interview? Freedom of innocence. That's new. And
I thought that was
yeah,
just gold
freedom
because it
of
really
innocence.
you framed it so well.
Thank you.
All you can do is defend that. That's what we need to do, stand up is defend that.
Right.
That just resonated so big. That was something.
Freedom of innocence was good, excuse me, was new. And then I reflect the community. I'm a reflection of the
Mhm.
community that I represent. Yeah, that one is brand new too. That was came up within this into yeah. Those two for sure.
I wanna thank you for the time, really taking the time today, that it wasn't a rush job, that we did it more in the later in the day and had time to get to know each other at a level that I have a much greater understanding of your goal, of what human is about.
Mm.
And then on the other side of the coin, the ghost project, and
Yes,
that's a fun,
indeed.
fun thing in itself. And what I didn't speak a whole lot about is you've interviewed a lot of people and you have your own style. And I think from you sharing some of that information, it certainly helps me. certainly helps. I've only done about 20 interviews, and you try I do a little better and be a little bit more thoughtful each time.
Yes, I do interview people. Would you like me to speak about it now?
For sure, throw that in. I'll cut a little things
Yeah.
here, and
Um,
I'll make it work,
um,
or I'll make a snippet out of it. Go ahead.
yeah, I have interviewed close to 100 and or more people over the last 3 to 5 years. And the one thing I have came to discover is the art of asking the right question.
Gosh.
So asking the right question is, I watched this movie with Will Smith, I, Robot, and I also watched Law and Order. So that's how I kind of started putting together how to create the right question, like the philosophy behind it. Will Smith was asking, talking to the hologram and asking it questions from the doctor that had got killed by the AI. And the response was, I cannot provide an answer because you're not asking the right question, basically. It's not the right question, it's the right question. So I was like, okay, interesting. And then during the Law and Order, I forgot which label it is because it's Law and Order. I see. I forgot that there's different criminal intent, there's different Law and Orders. But there's the heavyset guy who's a detective, and he would be about to catch the criminal. He'll be asking questions during the whole episode. And for a second, you think the criminal is getting away. Oh, yeah, like he's outsmarting him. But what he'll do is the way he'll always catch them was he'll be walking away and then he'll turn around and he'll be like, you know what? I have one more question now. And when he asks that one question, always catches them, right? So what I discovered was the art of asking the right question actually stems from not asking the question and looking for the answer that you're seeking, but asking the question and getting the most information about what is it that you're seeking.
Oh,
Not
gosh.
I want to hear this answer. I want to hear that response. It's when I ask this question, I want to hear the most information, not what I want to hear, but I want to hear a whole bunch of information about you. So that's what the art that I use when I approach my interviews is the art of asking the right question.
And
Because I believe a lot of people.
that is art. There's a great art to that. It's not something learned, it's something practiced. That you have to be going at it until you find that groove of asking the right question. Did I send you a copy, a download of a book called Ask?
I do believe you did it. I think so, yeah.
It's a husband and wife project, but Mark Victor Hansen was the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. So he wrote this with his wife,
Those
and his
good
wife has
books.
quite a bit to do with it. Now, the fable in the beginning about Michaela, it's good. There's a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of things going on about choosing paths and crossing the bridge. There's a metaphor to that. You'll see that if you read that. But it's not the whole book. You could just read the fable and get a lot out of that. But what follows, and I didn't know it at the time when I got it, and that was he gave me the ability to share it with others. So there's no problem with that. The rest of the book is like I don't know, an anthology. It's a series of notable people and what they went through and the way they asked certain questions. So there's a lot of pickup in that. So the fable is a good read, but when it ends, maybe it's a third of the book. I think it's something like that. The rest of the book are short stories. So you can pick it up, read another story and think about it, put it down and pick it up again. So it's that kind of book that they put together. And they've been promoting like crazy, I've seen lately. They've got it on Amazon and all that. But you got a copy. I was blessed.
Yes, sir.
So
I was blessed. But I wanted to
yeah,
say,
because it was a good story. Yeah.
I wanted to say thank you for this interview. This has been, yeah, one of the first interviews I've done this year, actually, on someone else's platform. Somebody recently asked me, when will I get interviewed again? And when will I be not like making appearances on other people's platform as well as being interviewed on my own? Because I have to find someone to interview me on my own platform, which is going to happen over the course of the years. I'm not giving it a specific date or time frame or anything of that nature. I do know that for me to be interviewed on my platform will take a minimum of 2 to 4 hours total because I have a very lengthy story, and a lot of things tied into that. But I want to thank
Uh-huh.
you once again for bringing me on. For anyone who's watching, thank you for sitting through the entire interview. I hope that you have walked away with some great points tonight or whenever you're viewing this interview. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, you could check out my website at www.human.world, HVMAN instead of HUMAN. Once again, it's a B where the U is supposed to be. And I do have an email address. You get in contact with Michael for that. For the rest of it, I do want those who watch this to acknowledge him as the person who gave me the platform, was able to interview me and ask some thought provoking questions that then gained some really insightful responses. Yes, I would really look forward to that for anybody who wants to check out the platform, even possibly come aboard or bring me on theirs. I'm open to exchanging. And once again, I would like
Okay.
to thank the man himself, Michael, for bringing me. So have a good, and
That
remember,
was fun. It was
be
real.
a
It was real fun.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Do you mind if I give you a call after this real quick?
Yeah, certainly. Well,
Yeah, no
thank you
problem.
so much.